All right, good morning, everybody. Welcome to Curiosity Corner Live. We're going to take a moment and wait for some more friends at home to join us. Let's see. I hope everyone's having a good day so far. See, I see Lindsay's already here. Good morning, Lindsay. Having a pretty good day so far. It's supposed to storm later, so that could be fun. See, I personally like rain, so it could go pretty well. But yeah. But no, I hope that you guys are having a good day. I know that it's still pretty early in the morning. Oh, good morning, Momgineering the Future. I love the title, by the way. I like to play on words. It's really fun. All right. So, welcome to Curiosity Corner Live. I am so glad you all joined us today. So we just wanted to remind everyone that events in Cleveland and around the country remind us that we all need to be present in our community. And as a STEM-based education leader in Northeast Ohio, we want to make sure that the Science Center stays true to our vision for a community that uses STEM to inform decision-making and enrich lives. And our Curiosity Corner Live programming this week has shifted to reflect a more inclusive look at some STEM innovators, both from Northeast Ohio and beyond, who personify the tenacious spirit and drive for understanding that science can inspire in anyone, regardless of gender, ethnicity, or religious background. So thank you all so much for joining us today. Yesterday, we got to visit with my friend Jandar and learn more about robots. And extra special shout out to Momgineering the Future. You guys have been killing it this week with all of these challenges, and I really cannot wait every day to see what you come up with. And I hope that you enjoy today's challenge as much as you've enjoyed the full weeks. So my name is Joy. I'm a guest engagement specialist at Great Lakes Science Center, and I'm actually coming to you live from the Great Lakes Science Center. And today we are going to be exploring DNA and genetics. So has anyone ever heard the term DNA before? So DNA, we all have it. Every living thing has DNA. It stands for deoxyribonucleic acid. That is a very, very long term, which is why we're going to say DNA. But every living thing has DNA, and DNA is the building blocks of life. It is what is in your body that makes you physically who you are, decides what you look like, how tall you are. Everything that makes you physically you is found in your DNA. And DNA is found in cells. So this is a model of a cell. Specifically, this is a skin cell, not to scale. Cells are much smaller than this. But the DNA is found in the nucleus. That's that little dot in the center right there. So we have millions and millions of cells in our bodies. But if you took all of the DNA out of the nucleus of one cell and stretched it all out, it would be over 6 feet long. And I don't know about you, I am not 6 feet tall. So how they got that much DNA into one teeny tiny strand is really interesting. I'm going to talk about how that all works in a little bit. But if one cell's worth of DNA is 6 feet long and we have millions and millions of cells, just imagine how much DNA you have in your body. It's a lot. So if every living thing has cells and every living thing's cells have DNA, do you think that our DNA is the same as any other living things? So let's take a little bit of a poll. So what percentage of our DNA do you think is identical to a banana's DNA? So if you have a guess, go ahead and drop it in the chat. But think about what percent are we exactly the same as a banana? So let me see. A banana's a fruit. Last time I checked, I'm not a fruit. Bananas, let's see. They're yellow. I have yellow on my lab coat, but that's not really in my DNA. I don't grow on trees. That'd be fun, but I don't. So what do you think? Anyone have a guess? What percentage of our DNA is exactly the same? Like exactly the same. All right. Are you ready for me to blow your minds? About 50% of our DNA is exactly the same as a banana's DNA. So we are half identical to a banana. So yeah, your 5-year-old thinks 70%. So yeah, that's a pretty good guess. But yeah, it's 50%. So here's the thing, that 50% of our DNA is what makes us living things. So think about what we have in common with every other living thing. We need air, we need water, we grow, we have cells, like those types of things that every single living thing has in common is 50% of our DNA. I know, it's shocking. We are half banana. Indeed. Half banana. Now, if half of our DNA is the same as a banana's DNA, how much of our DNA do you think is exactly the same as a spider monkey? Do you think it's more? Do you think it's less? Yeah, drop a guess in the chat if you have one. So I personally think I look a little bit more like a spider monkey than a banana because, for one, a spider monkey has a face. Bananas don't, unless you draw one with a Sharpie. I don't know. But yeah, so what percentage of our DNA do you think is exactly the same as a spider monkey? Think about it, we're about half the same as a banana. So our DNA is about 95% the same as a spider monkey. Completely the same. It is more because think about it this way. So 50% of that DNA is what makes us alive. 95% of that DNA is what makes us mammals, and specifically very similar to monkeys, because look at the monkeys. We have faces, we have hands, we have feet, we have eyes, noses, ears, mouths, we have hair. All that stuff is what makes us mammals. Pretty close to a spider monkey. So here's my last question. If we're 50% genetically identical to a banana, and 95% genetically identical to a spider monkey, what percentage of our DNA do you think is exactly the same as any person who's not related to you? So what percentage of your DNA do you think is identical to mine, to like your neighbor, your friend, someone around the world that you've never even met before? So if these clip art people were real people, they're clip art people, what percentage of their DNA do you think is completely identical? Anyone have any guesses? I think it might be more or less than a spider monkey or a banana. I don't know. So if you are looking at the DNA, your DNA is 99.9% exactly the same as every other person who is not related to you. So that's just because we're all humans. All humans have 99.9% identical DNA. That 0.1% is what makes you unique and what gives you your individual traits. So that 0.1% is what gives me my blue eyes and my brown hair. But other than that, we're 99.9% identical. So no matter what someone looks like or where they're from, genetically, we're all pretty close to the same. But everyone has that 0.1% that makes them different and gives them their own what they look like. Now, that 0.1% isn't just our looks. Sometimes we are more likely to develop different things medically, or we are born with certain conditions. So companies that help study your DNA, like 23andMe, are using people's DNA to help them understand more about their health and their body. So they have a medical team. Let me share my screen with you. So this is Dr. Altovise Ewing, and she is the 23andMe's first medical science liaison and genetic counselor. So she's a foundational member of the clinical development division, and she has a PhD in genetic counseling from Howard University, and she has spent years researching and working to use what she's learned about genetics in order to improve people's health and quality of life at establishments like the Cancer Treatment Centers of America and the Walter Reed National Military Medical Center. So that is really, really cool. So now that we know everyone has DNA and most of it's identical, what do you think DNA might look like? Now, we can't really see DNA with the naked eye because it's so teeny tiny because it's in the nucleus of our cells. But we have pictures that scientists have taken because they have their fancy microscopes. But we can make our own versions at home. So I'm going to use pipe cleaners, but you can use anything you want. So grab some craft sticks or some construction paper, maybe some cardboard, whatever you think will work to make your DNA strand. So you're going to need 2 longer pieces. I'm going to use these 2 longer pipe cleaners. These are going to be the outside of my DNA. And if you notice there's these beads on the outside because I'm using beads to sort of note what the different pieces are. Now, the outside of your DNA is made of something called sugar phosphates. And those sugar phosphates help hold all of your genetic material together, and it protects it. So inside of your DNA strand is all that genetic material. So I just grabbed some shorter pipe cleaners. If you can, again, like try cardboard or toothpicks or whatever you want. And your genetic material comes in pairs. So there's 4 components, A, T, C, and G. So A always goes with T. It spells the word at. And C always goes with G. Capital C looks like capital G. So if you're making your pairs, just have 2 different pairs of colors. So I have blue and yellow, and I have pink and purple. And what I'm going to do is I'm just going to make a ladder. So I'm going to attach my little strands to my big ones and sort of just make a ladder straight across like that. Now, the cool thing about DNA is it's not really arbitrary. We get our individual traits from our parents and our grandparents. It's something called heredity. So, for example, I have blue eyes. My father has green eyes. My mom has hazel eyes. So I remember when I was first learning about DNA, I asked my parents, I'm like, how can I have a different eye color than both of you? And it turns out that 2 of my grandparents have blue eyes. So they had the gene for blue eyes, and then they passed it down to me. So yeah, it's all hereditary. And there's other cool things that are in your genes. So if you look at your earlobes, some people have their earlobes that are attached to the side of their head. And some people, like me, they're just kind of just dangling there. So yeah, find your earlobe, see how it's attached to your head. That's also in your DNA. Now, the colored beads on the longer strands are to represent sugar phosphates. They can be whatever colors you want. But yeah, this is just the sugars on the outside. So one thing that a lot of people think is in your DNA, and it is, but not in the way they expect, is skin color. And skin color is really just based on geography because our skin cells naturally produce a pigment called melanin. And what melanin does is it helps protect our skin from the ultraviolet light of the sun. Because if you're out in the sun for too long, you can burn and it's not necessarily good for you. So people whose ancestors are from areas that have more sun exposure naturally produce more melanin. So that's really where skin color comes from. It's just wherever your ancestors are from and how much sun exposure there was. So for example, my mother's side of the family is from Norway and Sweden, like way, way up in Northern Europe. So she is very, very pale, as am I. My father's family is from Southern Italy. It's right on the Mediterranean. Has a lot more sun. He is tan all the time. When I was in high school, I was very jealous. But yeah, so his family just naturally produces a little bit more melanin than my mom's family does because his ancestors are from a sunnier area. So if you see people with different skin tones, it's because their ancestors were from different parts of the world that have more or less sun, and their bodies just developed in order to protect them from that sun exposure. That's really the main science behind that. So it's genetic, not so much in the way you might expect. Now, once you have your ladder, you can think about more about your genetic material. And the cool thing about genetic material is your genetic code stays with you, even though it does eventually develop over time. And that's how companies like Ancestry are able to help study your DNA and find your relatives and your ancestors and help you learn more about your heritage. And there's even a company that was formed by this scientist, if I can get the screen to go. There we go. By this scientist, Dr. Rick Kittles. He is a very successful geneticist. He formed a company called African Ancestry. And what he did was he and the person that he founded the company with helped develop an entire database that is specifically tailored to helping people of African descent learn more about their ancestors and their heritage, which is really, really impressive. He also has been published in a number of different publications. He's been on different TV shows and channels talking about his work. Like, he's super, super cool. And yeah, I'm going to make that. There we go. Now, So once you have your DNA strand, you have your ladder, like so. So you have a ladder, and then we want to give it a little twist. And what that does is it creates a double helix. And that double helix is how that DNA is able to compress and shrink down and fit into the nucleus of a cell. Because instead of just being all stretched out, it's twisted and more compressed. So that is how you make your very own DNA strand. Like I said, you can try a number of different household materials. I just happen to have some pipe cleaners and beads. And that brings me to your challenge. And your challenge for today is to make your own DNA strand at home using what you can find around your house. You can put as much genetic material as you like in there. And while you're doing that, think about what you have in your genetic material that makes you who you are. Think about what color your eyes are, what color your hair is, how tall you are, if your earlobes are free hanging or they're attached, if you have webbed toes or webbed fingers, do you have freckles, like anything that makes you who you are. Think about if you have brothers or sisters. Think about how you look alike or where you don't. Think about what you might have gotten from your parents or your grandparents or other members of your family. And then think about someone else that you might know who isn't related to you. And think about what you may have in common with them. Because even though we are all unique people, we all have a lot in common. So that is your challenge, to make your DNA and think about what all of us might have in common and what makes us special. So whatever you create, we want to see what you make. So take photos of your DNA strands, tag us, use our hashtag StayCuriousCLE. We cannot wait to see what you come up with and what you've learned about what we all have in common. And once you're done building, you can get excited for our next episode. So Monday, you're going to visit our friend Alyssa, and she is going to teach you all about parachutes and air resistance. So that's going to be a whole lot of fun. So make sure you come back for that. And then, most importantly, get creating, have fun. And until next time, stay curious.